I do send this out, this will be the part that I edit out, of course, right? But I'll leave it up
Okay.
to you. Yeah, again, you'll end up having the full video, and then I'll make clips. And every time I make a clip, I tag you in it, so that and if you want me to, I can make you a collaborator on Instagram. It's up to you. Or if you just want me to tag you in it,
Sure.
everybody wants it
Yeah.
done.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So when I make clips and put
Okay.
them out, I'll definitely let you know. And when I put it on YouTube, I'll make sure I at you. Are there any specific
Okay.
hashtags you want me to put on there? Any hashtags you got on your YouTube upcoming show that you're working on?
No, no specific upcoming shows. I've got one coming up, just a showcase in May, but like details aren't finalized yet. So
Okay.
that'll
All right.
yeah, you don't have to tag anything for that. But
Okay.
just hashtag Hartmanni. I'm trying to get a running hashtag trend of Hartmanni fam on Instagram and TikTok. So if you want to talk, if you want to tag that too, that'd be cool. But
Hartmanni fam.
mhm.
All right. I'll make sure whenever
trying to brand it.
I got you. Yeah, yeah. I feel that. That's the way to do. That's the thing to do. All right. So I'll get ready to bring you in. I'll play the music and we'll go from there.
All right, man.
One time for the one time. It's the family bloodline.
Yes, yes. Welcome back, good people. And thank you for hopping on with us for another very special episode of the Platinum Guest Series. I'm here with an amazing musician, artist, singer, songwriter, uh, voice actor as well, right? I saw that a little bit. We'll talk about
Yep.
that. I'll ask you about that in a second. And actually go into all the things that you are into and what you do. And I generally I take pleasure in listening to you introduce yourself. So with that being said, by all means, the man of the hour, please introduce yourself.
Man, appreciate having me on here. My name is Hartmanni. I am at the core singer songwriter, guitarist, but I do production as well. I do a lot of my own production. Um, as you mentioned, I love voice acting. I haven't been able to get into that as much as I want to, but I definitely love the art of it, and I do a little bit of it. I do my fair share for the moment, but uh, yeah, the singing, the songwriting. I play lead guitar as well. There's one of my babies right here, my main one.
Yeah,
Um, but just on this musical journey, man.
for sure. So quick question. We ran into each other. You were actually
Yeah.
the first person that Manny and I, ECAS, shout out to ECAS, shout out to Manny Lugo, of course, shout out to Zoe. But first person that we spoke with at, and you're gonna have to correct me on this, and this is again, shout out to Keith for messing me up on this. Nam or Nam? How do you pronounce it? That's the question.
Nam.
Nam. Okay, that actually
Yeah.
makes sense.
Not Vietnam. Yeah.
All right. All right. Good. So you were the first
But I
person
actually
that
saw someone post about that.
really.
Yeah, leading up to it, I saw he's a kind of a parody musician, but he is like his name is Juan Mayor. He does a little
Yeah.
play off of John Mayer, as if like John Mayer copied him. He's like, this next weekend I'm going to Nam. I'm going back to Nam. And he just made this whole funny bit about it. And I was like, I'd never thought about that. And I've lived around Nam now for the past 6-7 years. So
Oh, wow.
you're not alone in thinking that or getting messed up with it.
Well, good. I feel good about myself now. And I'm not as bad
Yeah.
So next time I talk to Keith, I'm gonna make sure I say that to him. I'm not an island. Don't treat me like that.
You're good. You're good.
So,
No.
so with that being said, how long have you been going to the event? Like, because you just said 6 or 7 years, but how long in its entirety have you been going there?
The first time I went was 2018. I moved to LA in 2017, and I got a really cool opportunity to be a guest with some buddies of mine that were playing with their band at the time for the Taylor booth. It was back when Taylor Guitars actually had a huge showroom, and it was massive. They're one of the companies that have downscaled since the pandemic, but I got to go then, and haven't really been able to go back again since 2018. But again, we met this past year, and that was the first time going. Got some connections, but I mean, living in Los Angeles, you're just around it. If you're not actually in NAMM, you're at least around NAMM events. People are in town, playing shows, hanging out. You know, buddies from across the United States fly in, and we reconnect and chill. So that's why I said I've been around NAMM since 2018.
Wow, that's amazing.
But that's
2018,
kind of like
I was in Mountain
that's
View,
kind of like
California.
L.
I had no clue as to that this thing,
Okay.
the Bay Area, it's up in the Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, but yeah, and it's another story for another time, man. It was a different life. I was a different place, and I had no clue that this was a thing until several years
Yeah.
later. But we ran into you.
Oh yeah.
Going back to the story, we ran into you in the lobby. You were the first person we spoke with, and I saw that you had on your name tag for the event and all that other good stuff. Uh, we chopped it up for a hot second, and it was a pleasant talk because it
Yeah.
actually happened what I anticipated. Didn't you walk us to the badging area?
Yeah. Yeah. That was
Yeah,
on my way out. So I was like, you guys were asking about where the badges were, and I had just gotten mine. And I was like, I was trying to explain it, and I was like, it's on my way out to park. So let me just take y'all there.
yeah. So thank you for that again. Otherwise, I would have been looking crazy.
Yeah.
So during our
No,
chat, I remember you sharing with us, and it was just like to me a very interesting story where you grew up, how you grew up, so on and so forth. So if you would please kind of like rehash that, like talk about your background, where you came from, where you've lived, the things that you've come in contact with, how long you've been in music, the influences that your music also kind of shows and projects and speaks
Mhm.
to, and go in about that.
Okay. So I grew up. My parents were missionaries for you know, most of my life until my early adulthood. So they up and moved our family when I was 5 to Albania, and that was. I mean, I'm kind of glad that we did that when I was really young because I wasn't quite used to, you know, what America was, and so there was a chance to really grow up with a different mindset. I hadn't been, you know, indoctrinated in all that is America and all that is American culture and language. So we moved over there when I was 5, and it was it was crazy. My earliest memories were there was no like McDonald's. Just imagine you're a kid and you're like, there's no more Happy Meals. There was no like Dr. Pepper and root beer and you know these different kind of American things, junk food, fast food, candies that you're used to as a kid, especially.
Hmm.
But and it was tough. I'm not gonna lie. Albania was newly independent from communism. It had only been a few years since the dictator had died. We moved over in '93,
Oh wow.
so it's I am very very thankful for growing up like I did because it gave me a very overarching worldview of just what the world is like outside of the U.S. and especially going into a poverty-stricken third world country where for most of my time there we didn't have electricity or hot water 100% of the time. Especially those first few years, I remember going a week or two without electricity, and that was just normal. Like that just
Wow.
happened. electricity gets shuts off. You got to ration out your hot water. But again, because I was so young growing up like that, that's just how life was, and you got used to it. So, like when there's ever power outages here in the States, I'm like, all right, well, get the candles, and
Yeah.
you can just hang out and talk to people. It's fine, no big deal.
Yeah.
But so we moved over there when I was 5 years old, 93. Again, just very. It had been communistic and, in fact, atheistic. It was declared the dictator Enver Hoxha declared it the first atheistic nation. So not only was like all privatized ownership and business stripped away, but a foundational belief in whatever religion that was, whether it was Islam, whether it was Christianity, Catholicism, Orthodox, Protestantism, all that was outlawed and banned. So it's like when everything is gone, usually if you're a person of faith, you can at least go to and rely on that. Now, granted, there were people that still went to that, but as far as an outward appearance, no churches, no mosques, nothing like that. So it was a very hammered down and desperate people when we moved over there. And so it was a really cool opportunity to just bring hope. Like we were involved in a lot of humanitarian stuff, food, and just help in whatever way we could. And that's how I grew up. Like as a kid, you're not as involved as you could be, or as like my parents were on a daily basis. Because I was just growing up. I was just trying to learn the language and find friends and hang out with people and just grow up. But that was still integrated into my upbringing as well. And that's where, like, my parents are musical. My parents, my mom and my dad both sing. My mom plays the flute. My dad plays guitar. And so we were always around music, even before that here in the States. So I always was around a musical atmosphere, whether that was at church or whether that was at home. But I was always involved somehow in some sort of musical expression. And eventually I was always singing, but eventually started taking piano lessons, and then I remember around like the transition between middle school and junior high. I remember finally just like deciding one day, I was like, I'm going to play guitar. I'm just going to pick it up. And that was always an inclination that my dad had. He was always not one to force kind of an instrument or anything like that on us kids. I'm oldest of 4 kids. I've got a younger brother, a younger sister, and then a youngest brother. But he tells me now, he's like, I just had the guitar and the instruments there, praying one day you would just pick it up. But it was never like, all right, David, you're gonna sit here and you're gonna take guitar lessons, and then that's that. No, It was always something that needed to come from me first, which I really appreciate. Picked it up, started learning it when I was around 12, 13. And man, I fell in love with it instantly. Like there was, I don't really remember like what I was into at the time. Probably PlayStation and hanging out with friends, soccer. I grew up playing soccer, football. Yeah. But man, when that part of the music hit me, I was like, it didn't take me long before I realized this is what I want to do. And started learning, took classical guitar, had a great teacher that I'm still in contact with. And shortly thereafter, within probably a year and a half, 2 years, started playing in bands. And I distinctly remember in high school realizing, and more solidifying that this is what I'm going to do. I had made a decision early on. So like, played more bands in high school. And one of the cool things that really showed me like the impact of music was we would go and just get a generator, and go set up in a random neighborhood grew up in Tirana, the capital city, Tirana. Or if you're from Albania, it'd be Tirana. That's just their accent, back to my voice acting linguistical background.
There you go.
And we would set up not a stage, but like in a neighborhood, like in a circle of apartments. Sound system, can't do that here in the States. Regulations out the butt. But in third world country, they don't have those kind of restrictions. And thank goodness they don't, because I really got to see just people come together via music, regardless of whether they spoke English or not. Everyone knew Shrek was big at the time. Everyone knew the song. Then I saw her face, now I'm a believer. And so we would play that, and they would all be popping out their apartment balconies and jamming along. We'd play some other random songs, but it was really cool to see the unifying factor that is musical expression, that everyone would come around, no matter, we didn't know who they were, their backgrounds, ethnicity, religion, language. Music crosses all those barriers when it's good. And so I was able to see the impact of music and what it could have on a people. And so that just stayed with me through college. I was very driven. My wife, I'm married, I have a daughter, and it's often asked of me, especially when we were first dating, she was like, so, girlfriends? Like, I was like, I didn't date in college at all. And that was really weird. And I get asked sometimes, like, why? And I was like, I was just focused. I'm out here paying for this degree.
Yeah.
But my main goal is I'm trying to pursue this passion of music that I've been onto since I was in high school. And I'm thankful that I at least had that focus and drive to keep pushing through college and not get distracted by a bunch of other stuff. But and that's just been from there. Songwriting in high school, that's where it started for me, and it continued through at university and post-university, and eventually led me out to LA to really dive in. It was almost like a last-ditch effort. It's like, all right, if this is it, I'm going to go out to LA, and if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. But if it is, this is my best shot. So that all happened in 2017. Just back up a little bit. Moved back to the States for university in 2005. And so 12 years, I was in the Dallas area, south of Dallas. And in 17, LA has been really good to me, but still pushing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That you say that, I was beautiful family, by the way. Absolutely beautiful family.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Shout out to One-on-One Studios. I gotta make sure I mention
Oh
them.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, Matthias.
Yeah. Beautiful studio, man. That's awesome. I was looking at some of your doing my homework, and was like, oh, I know that studio. I know the floor base. I know where that. Oh man, that's a beautiful.
Yep.
Yeah, love that place. Love that
Mhm.
place. Shout out to the
Super
guys
cool.
there. Yeah, hopefully I can get them on later and talk about the studio, because it's a very fantastic story that's behind it. So you were talking about
legendary spot, and Matthias and his partners, and they've really done a great job of kind of revamping that place and bringing some new life into it. Fun fact, I actually visited that studio randomly before the pandemic. Before I moved away from LA when it started, because it was like this entertainment, events and entertainment. There was nothing going on. Like everything was shut down. So I was like, I'm not going to sit here and get in debt. I'm going to move. I'm going to go somewhere else. But it was super cool coming back into it once I had met Matthias, and he had taken it over. But super dope spot. I actually ran into him a couple days later at NAMM. He was like, dude, he was like, we got some new amps and you need to come by and try. So I actually need to make a point and get back up there. I think he's got some Friedman amps and some cool guitar stuff.
whenever, so I don't even know the next time I'll visit the LA area. I do come to California few times a year, but it's for different endeavors.
Mhm.
So, but whenever I go back to the LA area, my goodness, I got to get back over to that studio. It's just absolutely beautiful in there. It's beautiful. So,
Yeah.
you were talking about um, your younger years and talking about
Mhm.
high school as well as university. So where did you stay in
Yeah.
Albania through high school and then move back to the States, or was there a transition that your family made midway through high school or after you graduated high school to come back to the States? Where'd you attend college? How did that work? How did that look for you?
So I had the school that I was in Albania. It had been set up by some other missionary families and other international people. Um, and it was essentially only like pre-K or kindergarten through eighth grade. So I had actually intended at one point to go to a boarding school in Germany, Black Forest Academy, for high school. And I'd actually toured the grounds there. Beautiful area. My background is, or one of my backgrounds is German, so I was like, oh, it'd be, you know, good time to get in touch with the fatherland, the fatherland or whatever.
Nice.
Learn more about that culture. But that didn't have it wasn't in the cards. Actually, pretty sad. One of the dormitories burnt down, so they actually couldn't accept any more students for a
Oh, wow.
certain time. But no, in hindsight, it was a blessing because that period of high school for me in Albania was very impactful as far as some of the relationships I was able to develop. And I mean, I don't know what could have happened in Germany, but I do know as a musician, as a songwriter, I blossomed during that time in Albania. And it was some of the best times of my life. So I'm thankful it didn't happen. But so then after high school, or during high school, like I said, the school I was at didn't have anything past eighth grade. So I ended up homeschooling for part of it. And then eventually, some of the other kids that were in my situation kind of formed a homeschool co op. So we
Mm,
did our own homeschooling programs together in the same room, but just had like a teacher overseer that could help out. So it was cool. It was very, very laid back. I loved it. I could get done with school by like 1 p.m. and go work out or something. It
oh
was chill.
man, I'm jealous.
Uh,
I'm jealous of that.
yeah, well, that's kind of like America is very unique in that we put kids in school like it's a job. Like we have them there from 8 o'clock to 3 4 p.m. Most schools, Albania, they were in school for like 4 hours. Like,
Jeez.
and that's it. They did. I mean, they crammed everything in, but you can do that. And Albanians come to the States all the time for university, and they excel because they all know how to study, and they all know
Hmm.
how to cram in work. Um, very intelligent people, but yeah, I've got my qualms with the American education system.
That
But
makes two of
that's
us.
another podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
another episode. But so after that, I came back to the States University, and as a missionary kid, there are some schools that are set up um, uh, Christian entities that actually give scholarships for tuition for missionary kids. So one of those I went to at the time was called Southwestern Assemblies of God University in Waxahachie, Texas. That
Ah,
was a
yes.
mouthful to try to
Yes.
say. But they've recently changed the name to Nelson University, which whatever, their prerogative. Um, but I went and studied music there. And that was a big pull because my mom had graduated from there, and I had a lot
Hmm.
of family around the Dallas area. So it was, you know, moving out by yourself at 17 to a different continent,
Oh,
let alone out of your parents' house, was something that I was excited for. But underneath it was daunting. I was nervous a little bit, but the excitement outweighed it. But it was definitely like, okay, well, bank accounts, driving, credit cards,
Yeah.
American sarcasm, like all this stuff I'm having to learn for the for the first time.
Yeah.
So came back to university and ended up starting a vocal performance major, and quickly realized that I don't want to study what's on the syllabus all 4 years. I want to sing and be creative. So I ended up transitioning after the first year to a just a general studies degree, which I'm very
Okay.
thankful for, because that allowed me to study other subjects that would still count for my degree, and that I would just be wasting money on. So that worked out, because I love history as well. So I saw a bunch of archaeology and history classes that I wanted to take that otherwise wouldn't have counted for my degree, and I would have had to end up taking more summer classes or even extra semesters. But um, studied music, studied guitar, and ended up studying history for a doctorate degree after that, because of my decision to go with a general studies degree during my undergrad. But that's another thing. I love history, archaeology, especially ancient Civ. Is
Yeah.
I'm fascinated day in and day
What's
out. I think that has to do a lot with growing up 20 minutes from castles, maybe.
sure? Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah. So
What
Albania, I'll just throw this caveat in there. Albania is very unique in that it is at the crux of most of the world empires that ever happened. So you think of like, you think of the Persians, this and
Mhm.
this, because the Syrians, Babylonians, they didn't get into Europe, but the Persians definitely tried to through Greece. But that's it. It's all in that area. So the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, and then later during the Great Schism of Eastern and Western Holy Roman Empire, that
Yeah.
was a crossing point. That Albania itself historically was the launching point for the Roman Empire into Greece and the rest of Asia Minor, and then Asia. They would sail from Italy across the Adriatic Sea to a city called Duris, and then from there launch into the rest of it. So Albania has amazing history and archaeology all around, and so you can't help but, at least I couldn't help but be fascinated with history.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm gonna have to. So I love history as well. Uh,
Yeah. Again, that's another podcast we could go
yeah,
into.
absolutely. Just a quick question, like time period. What's your
Yeah.
favorite time period of history that you look at, that you like to study, delve into?
Oh man,
And then we'll save it for another
that
podcast.
that's tough. I'll definitely say my favorite. I can definitely okay, but that's hard too, because as I studied before, I would always say pre-industrial revolution. Anything pre-industrial, pre-1800s
Yeah.
was fast. But then, like when I started actually studying the industrial revolution, how all of those decisions shaped the world that we have today, I'm like, well, okay, well that's fascinating too. But I'm definitely, if I had to choose, I'm definitely an ancient Civ guy. Like
Okay.
I love pre Roman Empire, all of that stuff, BC.
Yeah.
That's my
Okay.
fascination.
Man, we definitely gotta. We'll definitely have to come back on another podcast and talk about that, because I do a lot of reading. And
Oh yeah,
again, I love history as well. Love history. So yeah, we'll
yeah.
definitely come back to that. So
Let's do it.
different, yeah, different influences,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to your music, and especially growing up the way you grew up. Um, what were some of the biggest influences? Because you've got a pretty vast array of song selections, right? You go from John Mayer to Stevie to Mike,
Mm-hmm.
MJ. Like, you have a huge array, and even when it comes to writing your own songs, the Spanish song that you have, I can't pronounce it. That's why I didn't
Yeah.
say it. Uh,
Todo para ti
yeah, if it was French, I'd be able to say
means
it.
okay. Well, let me Google Translate that real quick. I figured it out.
But yeah,
Technology. Yeah.
right. But you have a wide array, very vast array of different musical intertwined uh collabs that you go through. Even listening to your vocal
Mm.
tones and the way that you sing, sometimes you hit at a gospel, sometimes you're hitting on more of a folksy type of sound. Sometimes you're hitting on, I don't want to call it a popular mainstream, but it's a showmanship, but it's also still articulating your vocal prowess, as it were. So where did that come from? Like those influences? Because I think it's absolutely spectacular, quite honestly.
Thank you. Uh, I don't really know. I mean, like I've lived all over the place, so I've been able to grab these things from different cultures that I enjoyed, and Albania is a very musical society. That's a huge part of their culture, dance and music. Um, but pop, like big mainstream pop was huge in Albania. So like I remember, um, and I grew up listening to a lot of gospel, and I grew up listening to a lot of uh, classic rock and gospel. Which, I mean,
Yep.
you
I know
you
where you're
you can
going.
definitely interchange. You can
Yes.
definitely interchange some of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They influence each other all the time,
Yeah.
and I remember my my first foray into like Whitney Houston and R&B and hip hop was actually from soundtracks. Um, my parents love Whitney Houston, so they had. I remember the Preacher's Wife album being on repeat. I
Yeah.
remember the Bodyguard album being on repeat,
Yeah.
and then when Space Jam came out, I was like, that cassette tape was on repeat for me in my Walkman.
Yeah.
So
That's that's
that's where I
awesome.
first heard, all the Whitney influence, and then like uh, what Salt and Pepper had a did they have a song on the Space Jam album?
They did.
I can't remember. They did, yeah. And
Yes.
Monica and Barry White was
Yes.
on it. Like
Yes.
that was, of course, R. Kelly, the signature song from it. I believe I can fly. Like
Yeah.
it was the best of the best of that era. And so like taking those parts and then rock and then gospel, um, I think, and then once the like the big like the Backstreet Boy, the NSYNC, the Britney Spears pop came out, that was huge in Albania too. And I enjoyed that because at that point, I'm in a family that all sings. I enjoyed harmony a lot, and it was just something again new and exciting. I wasn't really around for like the New Kids on the Block era, so I like that as well. So now you have this kid in high school who's listening to Backstreet Boys, Linkin Park, Whitney Houston, Bryan Adams, and Queen. I'm like, I
Yes.
guess that's who I am, you know.
Yeah.
So that was all just like high school, and so come back to the States. I guess I had a little bit of this flair. I don't know, but I all of a sudden, and I do attribute this to not having grown up in my own culture. So we have this term in the missionary kid community. We're called third culture kids, whereas we don't.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't say this is true for everyone, but a lot of them don't feel comfortable in the culture that they're living in because they're pulled out of one culture and dropped into another. And then they've been raised in that new culture for so long that when they go back eventually, like for school, to their original culture, so for me, America, you didn't grow up there. So you might
Mm.
look at it from the outside, but it's not something that you can relate to 100% of the time. So I found myself having more in common with the different minority groups at the school. So that's when I got into, of course, I'm in Dallas, Texas, so gospel mecca of the
Yeah.
United States. You've got Kirk Franklin, you've got Tony Evans, you've got, you know, Bishop Jakes, and then you have a lot of the Hispanic community there as well. So I was like getting all these cool new influences from there. And I was like finding, I went to a Christian university, so like we had chapel and we were playing a lot of CCM kind of songs. But then when I would get with these different groups and we'd be playing, some Eddie James, some Israel Houghton, some of these other gospel big names, I was like, ooh, I like this stuff. And I guess it kind of then triggered back to like the Whitney Houston stuff, um, the Space Jam soundtrack. And I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed playing more than four chords for
Yeah.
songs. I enjoyed all the minor nines. I enjoyed the flat 13s as a guitarist, and I was like, this is exciting to me. This is spicy,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's and man, that's just kind of stuck with me, like running with those crowds, and just learning and being influenced by that ever since then. I've always loved it.
That's awesome. And it definitely
Yeah.
shows. It definitely shows in your music, man. I enjoy listening. I've had a couple of few times, and I don't know why I didn't do this until today, but a couple of few times I've gone to your YouTube channel and I've just kind of like let things play.
That's a work in progress. That's a work in progress right there.
No, it's fine. But what you have there now,
Yeah.
I mean, at least for me, it works for me because again, I just let it play and I let your songs go through and a little bit of a musician myself. I'm just listening to
Mhm.
the different movements of your work. And I
Mhm.
appreciate even the way you do a cover on songs, right? I can
Yeah.
appreciate the work that you're putting in on them because it does with your explanation as far as your influences is concerned, you can feel every last one of those in a different part of your songs as you go throughout it. And I absolutely, I'm an 80s baby myself, so I love it. I love those progressions. I love the
Thank you.
movements. Yes, absolutely. So
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, man.
yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to perfect that and continue perfecting it, man. I think it's great.
Yeah.
When we'll discuss some things a little bit later and I'll share some stuff with you, but I'll just say right now, like I'm a huge fan. It's your music is freaking
Oh,
amazing.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely amazing, man.
Thank you.
So I was about to ask I was as I've been watching your progression, like I remember you talking to us when we were in California and you were saying that you had a show. But you are like always on the go with even if it's by yourself or if it's with your band. Like you've got a lot of things happening with your music. Talk about that a little bit.
So before the pandemic happened, I was always just strictly singer songwriter. I wasn't able to monetize it at all. I'd be playing the solo gigs, and it would be cool when I would make 25, $50 a night if I brought like 10 friends and they paid a door fee.
Yeah.
But I wasn't tapped into actually how to make money with music. And if anything good came from the pandemic for me, it was that I was forced to, first of all, relocate, move out of LA. My wife and I, we got married. Funny story, the first official day of lockdowns in LA, as fate can
Nice.
have it, we were going to do, and it was completely happenstance. We were going to do just a simple like civil ceremony with the justice of the peace, invite a few friends over, and then do a reception. My wife's from Miami. We were going to do a beach reception later that year, and we had our date set for March 30th, 2020. And it was, things were up in the air. We were both in events entertainment. We were losing jobs left and right. We had just gotten engaged at the end of February, and we were like, this is a terrible way to go into a marriage. Like, what are we doing? It's like the world is shutting down, and what, I don't know. And so we had I forget where she was from, some Russian descent, but she was going to be our justice of the peace at this little spot in Encino, California. And leading up to it, she was like, basically, look, all this stuff is happening. I'm canceling people left and right, but we have had a few conversations, and I want to keep you guys on your date. And I distinctly remember her. She was scared. She was like, please, just please do not tell anybody. I could get put in jail. I be quiet as a mouse, just
Oh,
begging us not to make it a spectacle.
yeah.
Please, just be quiet, please. So we get there, do the ceremony, even to the point where like our like 3 friends that showed up that were brave enough to go out and deathly afraid of being shut down. But now 2 days later, we got married. The night before that, Trump had said the borders are closing and everything is shutting down. LA itself had shut down as well. I can't remember who was the mayor at the time or governor. I think Newsom was still the governor. But yeah, we packed up and left and moved to Miami for the remainder of that year. And I forgot where I was going with this story.
That's all right.
What was the question?
No, I listen.
I just got into it.
No, I'm always down to listen to the creation story.
Oh, you're talking about of how I got into all this. So
yeah.
So like I said, I had only done really like singer-songwriter showcases up until this point. No money. And so when we moved to Miami, at the time I was playing for and managing this former American Idol guy. And we were in Miami, just waiting it out, seeing what was going to happen with the world. And but loving it. The South Beach opened May of 2020. We're like, all right, let's go to the beach. Let's chill. Like, living la vida loca aquí. Tú sabes, And I flew back into Dallas to actually play a show with him and the band. And some of the guys there were talking to me. They were like, hey, like, you guys should really consider moving back to Dallas because, we're opened up, we're working, we're making money. There's a lot of opportunity right now. So we thought about it. We prayed about it too. And we're like, this could be a good thing. We're not really doing anything in Miami. We're just kind of just chilling. It was cool for me to see where my wife grew up and just be a part of that culture in Miami. And she's Cuban. So I was again, that's another cultural thing. I was like, I'm excited to explore a new culture and to see what the food is, to see what I'm addicted to cafecito and pastelitos right now, guayaba y queso. And it gave me a chance to work on my Spanish as well. So just be a part of that. And I actually wrote that. You're talking about that song Todo Para Ti. That I wrote that reggaeton beat there in Miami, just sitting my mother-in-law's kitchen on my laptop in Logic, just working on beats. And I remember I hadn't done anything with reggaeton ever. Like I barely listened to it until I met my wife. She was like, "Oh yeah, I need to introduce you." She was like, "Bro, Daddy Yankee, Maluma."
Of course.
All these guys, and even Cuban classics like Celia Cruz and different Puerto Rican singers, Mark Anthony and Elvis Crespo. And
I love
so
Elvis.
there's a whole new. Bro, I'm about to do a video of Suavemente pretty soon for another. Yeah. Bésame, que yo quiero sentir tus labios besándome otra vez.
Yes.
I'm working on it. I'm shooting that video next week for another event company. So it'll be fun.
Okay. That's awesome.
But so again, a whole new sphere of influences to absorb and to create in. So I remember sitting at the table and just putting this beat together, and then I was like, "Hey, babe, check it out! I just wrote a reggaeton song," and she was like, "What?" I was like, "You did what? Like, let me hear it." And then she was like, "Oh my gosh, babe, this is really good." And it kind of had that same reaction with a few of her cousins and stuff, and then they heard it and they were like, "What?" And so that later turned into, I hadn't written any lyrics yet. I ended up writing the lyrics about a year later. But and yeah, that's how that song came about. But fast forward, moved to Dallas at the beginning of the end of 2020. Excuse me. And was able to get plugged into event and corporate work. I had never really thought about trying to play at weddings and hotels and restaurants. I'd seen people, but I'd never really like truly aimed to do that.
Yeah.
So I remember getting some of the first gigs and I was like, oh, wait, this is actually kind of a lot of money for just playing music. Like I think I could really do something with it. So in a matter of a year and a half in Dallas, and I've always been someone who hustles and grinds and gets out there and makes something for myself. My parents have always said that about me. They're like, David, we never worried about where you were or what you were doing because we know deep in our hearts that you're making it somehow. So within a year and a half of being in Dallas, so this now would 2021 through mid 22, I had risen to the ranks with this one company, and I had been one of their top calls for vocals and guitar. And I was doing singing at hotels and restaurants and other venues through various agents and agencies. And I turned it into a full-time profession. And at that time, we eventually had our daughter. And so I was supporting a wife and child on just a music income, just playing these gigs. And it was amazing. I was making more money than I ever had. And I was also the least busy I'd ever been because I'm now working from home. I started an LLC to channel all the music business through. And so I was home all day, except for, maybe 3 to 4 nights a week going out and playing shows and gigs. So I was like, this is awesome. But eventually Dallas wasn't our target home. It was definitely a place that was a nice retreat to during that time. Most of my family lives in the Dallas area still, my parents and my siblings. So it was nice for my wife to then get to experience that part of my upbringing. But eventually we knew in our heart that we were supposed to come back to LA and continue this music journey. And so at that point I was like, babe, you gotta get a job. Like it's cool here, but it's going to be some transitionary period between me building this music stuff back up in LA, but I know I can. I've discovered the formula in Dallas, and I can transition that to Los Angeles. I need to work a lot harder because it's a lot higher cost of living, as you know. But we moved back, and I was able to build that up now till, again, I'm doing it full time and in multiple groups and multiple avenues, cover bands. I'm in a Bruno Mars tribute band. I don't know if you saw that on my Instagram there. Yeah. So that was another thing. Like I'd never rapped before, and so when a buddy asked to join, he was like, "You be the backup singer." I was like, "Cool, check." Dancer, cool, check. I've done musical theater, have background in that. Nice. I was like, "Great," and he was like, "In rap," and I was like, "Oh." And that, bro, that's honestly like that's where the voice acting comes into play because. Like I remember sitting there and working on how to rap these things like different rappers. I don't think I ever got good at it, but I remember like little instances being able to channel a little bit of like, Shaggy or Sean Paul or Eminem or just like little snippets. And so that helped me. And so I was like, it's just an attitude thing.
Yeah.
Like as long as you don't sound super white and you could throw a little flair into it, and you can have the attitude about it. I do that now. I do that as well. So you talk about growing and trying new things in music. I've tried a lot of them, and I just enjoy music and too much to say no to an opportunity.
That's awesome, man. Golly, yeah, because you're always somewhere performing. So I'm doing my best to close out this chapter in my life. For my regular job, because my push is to like I used to say this to my younger sister when she was alive. She'd be like, "Well, what are you gonna do when you finish doing what you're doing now?" I said, "I'm gonna just have a speaker and the guitar, and I'm gonna be on the corner singing and playing, and that's it. And that's how I want to earn my living." And so from that, the evolution of that. Yeah, man. I also want to have like a painting upstairs. It's one of the first paintings I ever purchased for myself, and it's an old it's a trio, a trumpet player, a bassist,
Mm.
and a drum player, and they're in like a what would probably be just like a small intimate club setting, and that's my end state, like to have something like that somewhere where 'cause I'm also a chef, so I want to be able to
Okay.
transition from cooking to getting up on the stage or listening to somebody else who play, whatever the case may be. So
Yeah.
the life that you're living is the life that I've wanted. I love that I get to follow you when you're going from set to set, you know, and it's only a few clicks for me, but it's a full experience for you.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Hmm.
Vivid imagination. So I'm like, man, he had to uh, pack up, leave from this set, go to this set, break down, pack back up, leave from this set, go to that set. Man, that's great. The hustle.
Yeah.
That's the hustle. That's the lifestyle of a musician, and that's what I've wanted. So
Yeah.
what's in the future for Hartmanni? What do you do? Did you say that your wife performs also, or
No, she's very much a music enthusiast. Yeah, she's played guitar or not guitar. She played drums for a brief period in middle school. So that's her claim to musical fame. But
uh,
she is definitely, and I'm blessed to have this. She is 100% my biggest fan. You know, her and my parents fight for that position, but at this point, I got to give it to her because she
yeah?
lives with me.
I'm about to say, be
But
safe, man. Be safe.
oh yeah, oh yeah, I live with her. Uh,
Yeah,
but she is 100% my biggest fan and behind me every step of the way and everything I do, and she's real with it too. But as far as what's next, like there's always different projects happening as far as how I can make money. I'm always trying to get into new groups and just because no one and some groups kind of are a little territorial, but no one group can really provide all the income you need, especially as a musician, especially right
yeah,
now. It's just not a thing. So me and other singers and musicians are constantly reaching out and trying to find new avenues to work and make money and expand our financial reach. But so that's always happening. I'm always reaching out to new places, trying to find new opportunities. But as far as like that's my 9 to 5. But as far as my personal music goes, it was a real turning point actually at NAM because I was there to really I wanted to be there. Like it was cool to see friends and it was cool to see some of the latest and greatest products coming out. But I really wanted to go to some of the panels. They had some stuff
yeah.
on digital marketing strategies. They had one of them, a friend of mine, Rob, was leading a panel for AI in the future of AI in production. He had some top producers from Republic Records and Universal Music Group, and they were talking about just AI integration into the workflow, and that was a huge wake up call for me. Is that AI is the future, even when it comes to music. Like we've
Yeah.
already seen it used in numerous platforms. Suno is a big one that comes to mind. We hear like the artist generation of getting Frank Sinatra to sing Skeet Skeet or something,
Right,
and
right.
that whole manipulation of AI. But those producers really emphasized it can be used as an incredible tool to get rid of the grunt work that you do on a day-to-day basis as an independent artist, and that'll leave you with more room to be creative in the long run. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna hop on board and start learning some AI, courses and digging into that. But that also just really helped me get on the road to really honing in who I am and what I'm doing. So, like all of those influencers, I for the longest time I kind of coined my persona as an artist is I'm being in LA I was like I'm genre fluid and it
Mhm.
didn't matter. I was going to write R&B, I was going to write reggaeton, I was going to write rock, I was going to write folk and pop and acoustic and blues.
Yeah.
But it's cool. You can do that. And it's, you know, my Spotify is kind of like my resume of what I can do as a producer and an artist, but you're really breaking through. You really have to stay in a lane, and then you can break off from there. So I've worked at the beginning of this year a lot on branding and who am I and what I want to put forth initially. So Hartmanni as an artist is going to start out being pop rock soul kind of feel.
Okay.
And so that's where I'm kind of going this year, is really picking a lane for my brand and really driving that home as far as my content goes. I've been in the mix with a few different marketing agencies, and trying to help me just create a brand for who Hartmanni is, even down to like what I wear and the colors and how I portray myself on social media and out in the public and at shows. So there's all this planning, because I mean, these days as an independent artist, it's never been easier to get yourself out there, but at the same time, you have to do everything. You have to wear all the hats: videographer, marketer, content creator, creative, tour manager, booking agent. You just gotta do everything, and it's exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have a pathway in a lane, which I didn't before, it can even be more exhausting. So I'm really narrowing down who I want to portray myself as an artist, and it's been really good. The start of this year, work wasn't super abundant in January and February, but it allowed me time to first of all spend more time with my family, but then also really hone in what I want to produce the rest of the year, and that's been good. So I'm hoping with that, all that said, to be doing more shows that really just showcase that kind of image. And now that I have that, to write songs in that lane as well. So
okay.
I definitely, I've just recently partnered with a distribution company called Stream. They're out of Brazil, but they're launching in the US. I don't know if they've launched already or they will be soon, but their whole focus, and it's just cool how it happened, but their whole focus is actually AI integration into distribution, streams, royalties, marketing, planning, and they've been really great. A musician friend of mine reached out that actually works for them. Was like, "Hey, David, I feel like this is really something that's in your lane. I feel like you could really utilize this, especially as we're launching this in the US." So that's exciting, and I'm just really looking forward to really honing in on that image for this year, so I can grow from there.
That's awesome, man. I'm glad that vision, right? Once you,
Yeah.
once you've written down that vision, or you have the vision of what it is you want it to look like, you can set the proper goals and work towards that aim and that end. You can become strategic in that fashion as well, and position yourself and pivot when necessary, and reassess actions and go back through it and continue to practice that until you become the thing that you've envisioned in the first place. And the work and the dedication that you put in for it is always worth it. It's always worth it. So that's great to hear that you have a vision for yourself, because that vision leads to movement, right? And it becomes a personal progression. It's your dream, and it's up to you to chase it, right? So that's a part of that vision, man. I love it. I think that's super dope. I think it's super dope, and whatever we can do here at the Family Bloodline Podcast to help you get there, by all means, man. I'm on it with you. I love it.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, this is some of the stuff that I wanted to do this year. I think someone told me, I don't know if it was one of these panels or one of these producers, they were like, get on podcasts, get on, streaming things like this, like partner with people, collab with people. It doesn't have to be music, but stuff just talking about your brand and who you are and what you're about. You've got to build a story around why people should listen to you and what you have to say. In a world
Absolutely.
of social media where everyone has a voice now, how do you stand out? How do you set yourself apart? So some of us shouldn't have as many, outlets as we do, but it is what it is.
I can agree to that. And the only thing that I can hope is I don't have to be the premier voice in a room of folks talking. I do, however, want to make sure that my words are impactful, regardless of what's being said and shared. So, because everybody's got a lot to say, but that's another whole story for another time. This ain't about me.
Yeah.
It's all about you. It's the Hartmanni show right now. So,
Well, and I like that. I like that you said that, because that's always been a big part of my message and who I am as an artist. I always want to bring positivity. I want to bring my life experiences, and I'm a person of hope. I'm a person of faith, and I think the world can always use a little more of that, and that's another part of the image that I want to bring. And I think it's an oxymoron. It's like a upstanding, moral family rock star. Like, I haven't heard of that.
Right. That's a whole new ballpark right there. Right,
a rock star who leaves it all on stage and doesn't go out, the parties afterwards, but goes home to his family. And I mean, I don't know.
Rocks out at home.
New thing. Rocks out at home.
Yeah. Make it a thing. I'd follow it.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's part of my mission and my brand. So that's who I am.
I like it. So on the podcast, whenever we're doing our lives, we have something called Final Thoughts. And the final thoughts, it doesn't necessarily have to have anything to do with what we've discussed tonight. It could be anything that you're thinking, anything that you saw yesterday, anything that you want people to know about you that you might have glossed over, and you had that quick moment in your mind and was like, I need to get back to that. I want to make sure I say that before I get off. Right. Now, with this being said, Final Thoughts is not your final thoughts for coming on the podcast. You are always invited. All right. Just shoot me a line, be like, hey man, let's work something back out. I want to get back on. I got something coming up. And we'll definitely do that.
Yeah.
I don't want you to think that. Yeah. It's just Final Thoughts for this specific segment. And then we'll bring you on again for another Final Thoughts segment sooner or later, right?
Yeah.
So what are your final thoughts for tonight's segment?
Final thoughts. Jeez. How do you bring everything to culmination? And just kind of a running theme in my life. There's a lot of negativity out there, and it doesn't help anybody to add to the negativity. No matter what the situation is, this comes out in my music, but always try to be that positive voice in a room full of negative ones. Because even though negative headlines, negative talks can get the clicks, can get the clickbaits, can get the views, those are quick and gone in a couple of seconds. But I think the ones that make the most impact are the people that remain positive, that remain in love, remain in truth, and are trying to make a difference in the positive things.
All right, I dig it, man. I absolutely appreciate that.
Yeah.
I love that. So with that being said, as always, family, thank y'all for coming out. You could have watched anything else in the world, but you decided to hang out with myself and Hartmanni and listen to the first interview, right? And the movement, a progressive movement of music, right? And we absolutely appreciate that. We thank you for it. And as always, thank you for coming out. God bless. And give me 1 second. I got to lost my place there. Okay, there we are. I was looking for this. I lost it at first. We had a bunch of different tabs on here. It got switched up. Anyway, we back anyway. It doesn't matter.
All
anyway,
good. All good.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming out.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Thank you for coming on the podcast. And I look forward to getting to speaking with you more and watching you grow and push forward towards your vision, man. We're here for it. We're all here for it. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So this time, seriously, everybody, thank y'all for coming out. God bless and good night. There it is.